Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel, Backpacking with Banger. My name is Scotty Banger, and in this video, I'm gonna share with you guys all the best tips and advice about going over to the Philippines and purchasing a motorbike, or what you can plan to expect. I just motorbiked 5 months through the Philippines, so I figure I'd put together a little video to help you guys out if you ever wanna go check it out and spend some time motorbiking in the Philippines. In my opinion, I think it's one of the most underrated countries to go explore and travel, and especially by motorbike, because it's one of the most convenient ways to see the country. So there's a lot of stuff I'll be sharing with you guys to give you guys the best advice. So let's start diving into the advice here. So first off, I knew I was gonna spend about 5 months in the Philippines. I went over there about a week before Christmas in 2022. And I'd done some research prior to arriving about a month or two before, and I was looking at purchasing a motorbike, and a couple of the videos that I saw on YouTube showed that one guy bought a brand new bike, but he wasn't able to drive his bike for about 3 months. Apparently it takes 3 months in certain areas of the Philippines to receive the registration, also known as the ORCR in the Philippines. So it seemed kind of interesting, and kind of deterred me from wanting to buy a brand new bike in case it would take 3 months to receive the registration. And so I ended up looking into just used bikes online, and I just figured once I got boots on the ground in the Philippines that I'd figure it out. So I ended up arriving to the Philippines, met one of my best friends over there the same exact day we arrived to the Philippines, and we figured we would just figure it out as we went. So we arrived in Davao City, and we were kind of playing around with the idea of purchasing motorbikes. And the first week we were just kind of stayed patient. We were just taking local transportation here and there, just exploring the city by foot, and ended up splitting a taxi to a little city called Tagum, just north of Davao City, which was about $40 or so. We split that $20 each, and because we want to be at Christmas on the beach and just relax at a little beach spot instead of inside the city. So we arrive, and it's Christmas Day. The next day we're hanging out on the beach, and all of a sudden an American guy walks up, and my buddy and I were having some lunch, and this fellow American, he sits next to us, and we start talking for probably a good 2 hours. And he had lived in the Philippines for, I forget, maybe close to a year or so. He was renting a place and building a house at the same time. He ended up he had a girlfriend, and he had her a motorbike. He had his own personal motorbike, and he also had purchased a motorbike for his workers. So after getting to talking to him, he's like, well, if you're gonna be here for an extended amount of time, excuse me, he's like, well, you got to have your own wheels in the Philippines. And my buddy and I, we both agree that we had to get motorbikes. And he's like, yeah, you don't want to be doing buses or renting bikes and having to return them in the same town or city that you rented them from. So that was basically our mindset, was to get bikes. And the gentleman who we met, his name's Mike. Great guy, awesome guy. And so he was like, well, I might be able to sell you guys, a bike that I'm not using, that my workers don't really use. So, I mean, right away, I took up the opportunity. I was like, well, will you sell it right now? It was basically a brand new Yamaha 2022 114cc. He's like, yeah, I could probably sell it to you. And I was like, oh, how much? It's $1,100, basically brand new condition with a full face helmet. He had just purchased it about a month prior to me meeting him. So I was like, okay, I think this would be a great opportunity to give myself some wheels in the Philippines, and especially being Christmas, I figured it'd be a nice little Christmas present, and just pull the trigger and have a motorbike. So he kind of left my buddy without a motorbike. So at that point, Mike and his girlfriend and myself, we hopped on his motorbike, the three of us, and we go over to his house, his little rental house, and he showed me the bike. And I was gonna give it a little test drive. It was raining real hard, but we were able to give it a little test drive, and then yeah, I was able to give him the $1,100, purchase that from him, and in order for it to be like legit, because he didn't have the ORCR, the registration yet, so we just apparently all we had to do was take a picture of his license and my license, and then just have something writ up saying that he was selling me the bike with you know, the year, the make, model, and we both signed it, and that was basically it. We were just, at that point, I just had to wait for the ORCR, and I was a little skeptical at first if I was going to be able to leave the province or the town, to be able to go motorbike around without getting pulled over and getting in trouble, because I didn't have the proper certificate. And so I just ended up going with it, and I was just waiting for the ORCR to show up, and then Mike would send me over the paperwork. So anyways, so here we are, Christmas Day. I purchased it that night. It was quite the mission, but just getting back to the hotel was raining real hard. So the next day we wake up, my buddy Vince and I'm like, well, I got a Christmas present, I got a motorbike, and my buddy Vince was like, well, I guess I'm gonna go down to the dealership and go get myself a brand new bike. So I take Vince, on the back of my motorbike, which my motorbike is definitely not so big for two people. So here I am the next day on this motorbike that I just purchased, taking Vince on the back. We had to drive about 20 minutes into town to the Yamaha dealership where we found that, and so he ended up purchasing a brand new Yamaha 2023 155, I think is the Yamaha X-Max, I believe. From what I recall, he spent about $2,300, brand new, out the door with a helmet. And when he purchased it, all he had to show was a driver's license and a credit card, and that was it. Both of our bikes, we never heard of anything about having to have insurance, so it doesn't really seem like insurance was really even a thing in the Philippines. I could be wrong, but we never heard anything about any insurance at all. So just drive it as you wish, and good luck, basically. So at that point, so we both have our motorbikes, but his motorbike, again, he had to wait. So they said at the dealership that, oh, well sir, you can drive the motorbike in this town for the next 3 months or however long it takes to get the ORCR registration paperwork. But if you drive outside the town to other places, you could get in trouble, this and that. So we're like, okay. And we were planning on going all the way to the north of the Philippines. We weren't going to be spending any time in that town. Definitely not to be waiting for a registration. So the next day we've got our bikes, and we put our bags on the bike. We ended up just bunging it to the seats, so we'd sit there, drive, and then right behind there'd be just enough room to have one backpack. And we found some good bungees, and we would just bungee the bag. And the first few days it was kind of interesting, because sometimes the bags slide around, or if we're on a bumpy road and Vince is in front of me, sometimes I'd see his, next thing I know, his backpack is kind of on the side of the motorbike, and we gotta situate our bags. And so it was quite entertaining to try to figure out the best way to strap it down and be able to get in and out of the bag when we go to these little hotels. So let's see, as we continue on, we're just doing day trips, motorbiking, basically just road tripping. We would spend maybe driving 2-3 hours a day, sometimes 4, 5, 6 hour days, and generally no more than, I don't think I ever did more than 100 miles in one day in my 5-month trip of motorbike in the Philippines. So we'd stop, relax, I'd look at the map, and okay, there's a town up here, it'll take us about 2 hours to get there non-stop, but there's some cool spots we can stop, maybe some waterfalls or beaches, and take our time. So a 2-hour drive would maybe be a 5-6 hour day just by the time we stop, relax, enjoy our time, get lunch. So we continue up Davao on the east side of the coast. So beautiful, just unbelievable. Just the roads up there and the mountains overlooking the beautiful ocean and islands out there. I mean, we were just stopping every 5 minutes to take a photo or a video, and wow, it's so beautiful. It was just so gorgeous. I mean, we're picking up meals on the way, stopping for lunch for $2 a meal or so, little local carinderias. And so we made it up, and we made it to a little port just near Siargao. We've heard such amazing things about Siargao Island, some of people's most favorite place in the Philippines, so figured it was basically on the route. And so we get to the port, and we're both a little bit concerned if they're gonna check for our paperwork, make sure we have the right certification, whatnot. So we're like, yeah, the boat leaves tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. So we get there, and all is smooth. We get his bike on, my bike on. I think it was maybe $10. We go up this narrow little ramp onto this boat. I mean, it's $10 for the motorbike, plus for the guys to help load the bike was another like $2-3 onto the bike or onto the boat, and then off the boat another $2-3 for the friendly locals to help us get the bike back onto the port without the bike falling into the ocean. And so that was all cool. Made it across. We're on the next island. Woohoo! We're cruising around for good four days. That was just before Siargao, and saw some incredible places. I don't think I saw a terrible place in the Philippines. Every island is absolutely gorgeous. So we finally make it up to Siargao, and I'm thinking I'll spend about a week there. And I think spent about 8 days total. It was raining a lot. It was right in rainy season. That must have been in January, middle of January, late January. I think it rained 90% of the time there, but a couple days we were able to go out and explore. Some days the roads were flooded, so we show up to the road and we got our rain gear on, maybe a garbage bag. We ended up upgrading to some better raincoat gear as we were traveling through, because it was just, I mean, we were going through some serious downpour, and we'd have our helmets on and raincoat and make sure everything's dry, and garbage bags or something to keep our backpacks dry. So yeah, so one time in Siargao, we come up to a road and it was all flooded, and people were kind of stopped, and they brought us this raft made out of it's like big old bamboo or something in this raft, and I think it was like $4 I paid, and they pick up the bike, put it onto this bamboo raft and get me on it, and they're pushing me through the road, and they're in waist deep water, one guy was actually swimming. I'll never forget, I was on the raft and the guy was pushing, and then he goes for a little swim and he's swimming around. You get through that, go through another one of those. It was just quite the adventure on Siargao. So after Siargao, we get back over to Surigao City, where we got to renew our visa. The visa on arrival there at the time was 30 days. I've heard it's been upgraded to 60 days, or maybe in the near future it's the visa on arrival is now good for 60 days. I'm not quite clear on that at this moment. So we went over to Siargao City, spent a few days to get our passport stamped for another 2 months. That cost, I think that was something right around $70 for a 2-month. Or no, I'm sorry, the first extension had to be 30 days. So that was about $70. Get the extension, back on the road, go to this island called Dinagat. Yeah, that's a secret little hidden gem. Spent about 10 days on Dinagat cruising around. And then back to Surigao City to get up to Leyte. Cruising up Leyte, and I think maybe sometimes before the little towns or the province, the barangays, there's these checkpoints. Says checkpoint, stop here. 99% of the time at those places, you just there'll be a guard there, maybe 1 or 2 people there, and they're just kind of sitting there, and you just drive slowly through it, and usually I just wave, and they smile and wave, and you go right through. And there was one point when I was on Leyte, sometimes they're a little bit more strict during the checkpoints, and so it's, you know, a guard and probably five of them or so. I'm like, okay, we're gonna get stopped. They might check for our registration and, you know, whatever else, and we stop, and the officer just asked me, he's like, oh, you got your driver's license? I go, yeah. Showed him the driver's license. You know, I got no plates on my bike. My buddy behind me, Vince, he's got no plates on his bike. Show him my ID, the driver's license. Okay, all right, you can go through. And then Vince is right behind me, and it's like, oh, you got your license? He's like, oh, it's tucked under. You know, he had his bag on top of his seat, and his license apparently was underneath his seat, and everything was all strapped down. He's like, so the guard was like, oh, that's all right. You can continue through, no problem. So we both got through that, no problem there. And there were several of those checkpoints when I cruised through, and I was always kind of a little bit worried if they would check for the proper documentation. But over the 5 months, I did 4,666 miles, where I Davao City up to Baguio City through Manila. Never once had a problem. Not a single time. They were so kind and friendly. I was told that as a foreigner there's no really real way to give you like a ticket, because you're not in the system. They don't have the system quite set up, and I mean they basically just treat us like rock stars. They're happy we're in their country. So that's stories that I've heard, and I felt the same way from the officers. I felt the most respect from them, and I wanted to get to know them better and hang out with them. They were so friendly. It was unbelievable. So continue venturing on and on and on. My motorbike got 100 miles to the gallon. Throughout my whole trip, I spent $280 roughly for 4,600 miles. So that was awesome. And sometimes there'd be more serious checkpoints, and if I didn't have my helmet with me, generally if there's a checkpoint, you'll see like 30 locals, maybe 300 yards before the checkpoint, if maybe they don't have their current proper documentation, or or if they don't have their helmet, so they'll wait about 300 yards before the checkpoint, and generally the checkpoint's only up for maybe 2, 3, 4 hours. It kind of depends. And then once they clear out the checkpoint, then all the locals go. So sometimes I would see a bunch of people and I'd be like, oh, there's a lot of people here. And then I'd see the checkpoint, so maybe I'd put on my helmet and then get through. But I never had a problem. There's one time I didn't have my helmet and I wanted to get through a checkpoint, so I just ended up turning around and hanging out, staying the night where I was at. So there was 2 times where there was a small checkpoint, and Maurice and I, we weren't wearing a helmet. They were tied to the back of the motorbike. Because generally only in the cities they check for helmets or make you wear them. But mainly 85, maybe 80% of the places I was at, there was the locals don't use helmets. They weren't mandatory, so I would generally just wear it where it was mandatory. And so I get pulled over, we're not wearing our helmets, and I'm like, all right. He's like, all right, come over here. And we stop, and he's like, oh, where's your helmet? Like, oh, it's right here. Okay, put on your helmet. No fine or anything. No bribe, no nothing. He was just super cool. Yeah, just put on your helmet, make sure you're wearing it. Didn't ask me for money or anything. I'm like, okay, thank you, officer. And so we get the helmets on, and all's good. It was a few days later, I get pulled over again for no helmet, and Maurice and I, and same thing. Oh, come over here. There's like five policemen, and they pull us over to the side, and they're just kind of joking around, having fun, just super lighthearted people. And they're like, yeah, just put on your helmet. Okay, put on the helmet. Off we go again. No problems. Nicest officers in the world. Super cool. And then after that, I was 4 months into the trip or so, and Maurice and I are exploring all over, motorbiking. The only time I had issues was I had a flat tire I was starting to get a flat every 3 days or so. It was just getting lower and lower, and I'd have to go to a little gas station and pump up every 2 or 3 days to fill it up. And after enough times of doing that, I was like, well, I gotta get this fixed and figure this out. So I ended up taking it to a shop, and they recommended a tubeless tire. And they said even if a nail goes through the tire, that it'll still be fine. So transferred over. I got this tubeless tire, switched that out. That must have been, I think, $12 for that. And then the oil changes the first 600 miles on the motorbike, I had to get an oil change. That cost about, each oil change was, I think, $8 or so with oil and everything. And then after the first oil change, to break in the motorbike every 3,000 kilometers, so 1,600 miles or so, get an oil change, another $8 or so for an oil change. But other than that, that was all the maintenance that I had to do on the bike. Switch out a tire and 3 oil changes, and that was the extent of the cost and labor. So grand total, yeah, it was, oh my gosh, maybe $40. And let's see, at that point, getting through Angeles City up to Baguio, and I know I'm having to leave in a couple weeks, so I ended up putting my bike on, I put it up on Craigslist about 2 weeks prior to when I was going to be leaving. And I put up on Craigslist, wasn't getting, no calls, no messages at all. It was super weird, and I put it up for, it was like $600 or so. I was debating on just leaving the motorbike with Maurice at that time, or or selling it for 600 bucks and being able to support her for a little bit there when I left, so she wasn't high and dry. So I actually offered her the motorbike. I was like, well, you can either have the motorbike or I can sell it, and I'd be willing to give you a couple $100 or so from the motorbike to be able to get you on your feet when I leave America. She's like, oh, it's fine. I don't need the money, or I don't need the motorbike. She didn't even have a driver's license or an ID to be able to drive the motorbike, even though she is an adult. She is over 18 years old. So I was like, okay, well, she can't use it, I'll just sell the bike. And so I get over to Angeles City, and I've got maybe 2 days left in the Philippines before I gotta get to Manila and fly out. And I'm like, I gotta get rid of this bike. So I'm driving around these different shops. I'm like, do you guys buy used bikes? No, we don't. And one guy I met, he's like, you're better off just posting it on Facebook. So he ended up giving me a Facebook site. It's called like Angeles City Pampanga motorbikes for sale or something like that. He's like, yeah, get on these pages and post it. I was like, what do you think it's worth? Oh, about 600 bucks. And at that point, I just needed to get rid of it so I could get something out of it before I leave the country. So I posted it for 500 bucks, and then basically immediately I had about 3 messages. Oh yeah, I'll buy it. So I'm like, okay, I can get rid of it. So the very next day, the guy comes over to my hotel. I meet him, and he looks at the bike. Looks great. He's like, all right, I'll buy it. So in order for me to sell him the motorbike, I had the ORCR, the paperwork actually sent over to Angeles City from Mike, which cost, I think shipping was maybe $10 from Davao City to Angeles. And I thought it'd take about 3 weeks, but it only took about 10 days or so. So I had the proper documentation finally at that point to where I could sell the bike. So I had the paperwork, and then apparently the guy I was selling it to, he wouldn't buy the motorbike until I had Mike's signature. He said I needed, just even on a white sheet of paper, just three of his signatures, and then take a picture of that with his ID next to the 3 signatures. And then I sent him, the new buyer, the photos of what I took of Mike's ID, my ID, and a little written bill of sale. And that was it. He got the 500 bucks for the motorbike, sold it, and that was basically the end of the motorbike trip when I said goodbye to the motorbike. But yeah, purchased it 1,100 bucks, basically brand new. Sold it for 500. Probably could have gotten 600 for it, but it's not a big deal. I was ready. I had to get out of the country and come back to America at that point to start work. So hopefully through my experience, it'll help you guys out. Let's see if there's anything else I can tell you. Oh, I did have a rack welded to the back of my bike, because that's when I met Maurice, and we're gonna travel together. So I would have had no room if my backpack was just strapped to the back. So I ended up searching around this little town, and I found a rack, and a guy, he had to weld it kind of to make it fit between the rack and the weld job. That was $40. But what a lot of people do in the Philippines, if they're on a long motorbike trip, they'll purchase something where it's a rack that comes off the back of the bike, and then this lock box, and you can put all your belongings in that. So that would have been another good way to go. That's what my friend Vince ended up doing. But in my situation with my bag and Maurice's bag, and then bungeeing them both down, that was definitely a good technique, because both of our bags would not have fit in that general lock box technique that a lot of people use. And what else here? Yeah, I had to fill up my motorbike generally every other day. If I was on a long haul, I'd fill up my tank. It was basically, it would hold only about 1 gallon roughly, so I was spending like $5 to fill up every 2 days, and some of my days were 8 hours on the road. And yeah, the visa extensions, I did after my first extension of 30 days. I went in and I was able to get a 2-month extension at that point. They didn't allow me to get anything more than that. So the two-month extension, and at that point you have to get like this alien card of some sort. So for that 2-month extension, that was like, what did I spend? About $280 roughly, which seemed kind of pricey. But I realized, because I continued on, and I ended up doing another 2-month extension in a different town. I think I was in Naga. Even though I was going to be there for a month and 5 days, I figured, well, I had to get basically a 2-month extension at that point. And that 2-month was only $120. So depending, and I didn't have to get the alien card at that point. So depending on, I realized which city you're in, they have different prices throughout the Philippines for at immigration. So that was very interesting to learn. There's different prices. Some were a lot less, some were a lot more. And yeah, that was kind of interesting to know there. But yeah, no insurance needed. It was an unbelievable trip, 5 months. And I think I spent like, what, $7,000 total or so. And it was just an unbelievable trip. I think it's one of the most undiscovered countries, best countries in the world to motorbike. A lot of people talk about Vietnam and doing the motorbike trip through Vietnam, which hundreds of people do that every year, if not thousands and thousands. But you go over the Philippines, I mean, I was like the only foreigner around. Between my buddy Vince and I, would get to a town, there no other foreigners, and we get a lot of attention from the locals because they don't see foreigners a lot, and they treated us so well. I never felt unsafe one time during my entire trip. Sometimes through the cities is kind of crazy, but fun at the same time. Going through the traffic, it's definitely exhilarating, sometimes super fun. And the worst thing that happened to me on my trip, which isn't even that bad, I was in Baguio City, and I left my helmet on my motorbike, and Maurice's helmet was on the motorbike, and we went into our hotel and slept there. We came back out in our helmets, and apparently the owner brought our helmets in for us. We're like, oh, he's like, oh, be careful here. Sometimes the kids walk by and take the helmets. So we're like, okay, and we had our helmets. Of course, the next day, we leave our helmets again on the bike. I was planning on going back out and motorbike and exploring that evening, and sure enough, I had forgotten, because we weren't ever used to bringing in our helmets. Majority of the time, we just leave our helmets there. Everything's fine throughout the Philippines. Never had an issue. So forgot them. I'm like, oh, I wake up the next morning, probably our helmets are gone. Sure enough, we get down there. Somebody had taken my helmet, the full face helmet, but left Maurice's pink helmet. They didn't even take that. But it wasn't a very costly mistake. I just went over to the mall and purchased a new one for $36, brand new. This awesome full face helmet. You click little button, little windshield comes down, even some sunglasses if you want that come down through the helmet for $36. So that was the extent of the worst that happened during my motorbike trip. But yep, I hope you guys all get a chance to go and do what I just did in the Philippines. unbelievable country. The people there, friendliest people in the world. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Hopefully you guys get out there and do something that I just did. So at some of the dealerships where I went in to get my motorbike service for oil changes at the Yamaha dealerships, I did see some signs and talk to the workers there where it doesn't take the 3 months to get the registration. There's options where you can get it in like 7 to 10 days with I think a little bit additional fee. So depending on where you are in the Philippines, when I was traveling through, I'd stop at these dealerships sometimes, and there was options to where you could have your ORCR registration and plates made, you know, within like 7 to 10 days. So I found that kind of confusing. In some areas it took 3 months, but in other areas it would take 10 days. So, and I did get my license made. Once the ORCR came to Mike's address, he sent me a photo of it, so I had the license plate number, and I found a little place in town, a little shop that made license plates. So all I had to do is go there, paid I think $5 or so, and gave him the license plate number, and was able to pick it up the next day. They put it on a piece of plastic and then put it right on the bike, and then I was good to go. And the other thing I want to mention is that when I was getting my bike on a different ferries, because I was on about 8 different ferries, these big old boats, they call them ro-ro boats there, that can hold, you know, cargo and trucks and semis and motorbikes. So a lot of times most of the places up until I had my license plate, I'd be getting on these boats, and they would, when you go to the ticket office, I'd have to fill out forms and pay and have the motorbike. It was generally about $20 a ride or so from one island to the next on the bigger boats for 20 bucks. So they'd often say, well, we need your license plate number, registration, and at that point I'd tell them, you know, it's a brand new bike, I haven't received the ORCR registration yet. One or two of the places at the ports, they're like, oh, okay, you know, it's a new bike, okay, and they'd let me go. But the majority of the ports, they would say, oh, well, if you don't have that, then you'd have to go to Coast Guard, which generally there's a Coast Guard station right next to the ticket office, maybe within a block or so. So I'd go over there kind of nervous, you know, if they'd let me onto the boat or ask me about the paperwork, and I went over to the Coast Guard, and they're like, okay, yep, brand new bike, license. I just show them my California license. They'd give me a little stamp or write on the back of a ticket, okay, good to go, no problems. Off I went. I had to go to a few, maybe three Coast Guard stations, and I would just show up there, and never had a problem, even without the documentation or showing that I'm the owner or anything. So that was awesome. If you find this video entertaining or helpful in any way, feel free to hit the like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you guys have any interesting comments on any of your experiences or thoughts. I'd love to hear from you guys. That's it for this video. Signing off. I'll see you guys in the next Backpacking with Banger episode.